We should have more people joining us, but I'll start with just a general Living Agro project introduction. Thank you very much for joining us today for our workshop. This is part of the Living Agro project, Cross-Border Living Laboratories for Agroforestry. I'm Lisa Radonovsky, working with the Department of Horticultural Genetics and Biotechnology at MAIC, the Mediterranean Agronomic Institute of Chania in Crete, Greece. The project we're working on is a 4-year project, an ANI CBC Med project that supports technology transfer and commercialization of research results. Please note that we are recording this workshop and may take screenshots. So if you don't want to have your face visible, you can turn off your video, and you can use an alias if you don't want your name to be shown. Anyway, the project has a cross-border dimension with 4 European partners from Italy, Greece, and 2 Mediterranean partners, LARI in Lebanon and NARC in Jordan, as well as 5 associated partners. Now we're working with living laboratories. And here's one definition: an open innovation ecosystem that operates in a well-defined territorial context, in this case, international, to integrate research and innovation processes. And we are trying to bring together people from the sciences and research industry, but also just any stakeholder who can benefit. So in a living lab, we have a real life context. We have stakeholder participation and involvement, so it is user-centered, and we have a lot of collaboration for co-creation. In Living Agro, our living labs are active collaborations among farmers, agri-food company representatives, local authorities, researchers, innovators, and other stakeholders. And we are trying to identify common problems in the real world and then find and share innovative solutions that can help stakeholders. We're working with agroforestry, and you can find many definitions, but basically they involve a combination of woody perennials, such as trees and shrubs, with agricultural crops and or animals, either at the same time or one after another. And you'll hear more about this from Dr. Pandera shortly. Of course, there are many benefits to agroforestry, such as increased social, economic, and environmental benefits for land users and communities. We're also working with innovation in Living Agro. And in our case, this especially relates to the introduction of something new or something renewed, which turns into an economic, social, or environmental benefit. So the general objective of Living Agro is to create 2 cross-border living laboratories to support training, research and development, and technology transfer in agroforestry, strengthening cooperation among researchers and many different stakeholders through field visits, collaboration, research and development, field trials, technology transfer. We have 2 living labs in Living Agro. Living Lab 1 relates to multifunctional olive systems, in which olives are grown for table olives and or olive oil. And you see, we can have animals or crops among the olive trees. And then Living Lab 2 relates to grazed woodlands, which will be the focus today. So we have had in the project 20 field visits in which researchers learn about innovation needs directly from the end users and share innovation offers with the stakeholders. So you see some examples from Greece, Italy, Lebanon, and Jordan. We've had field trials as well with real life settings, for example, related to innovative seed mixtures and green manure. And in Jordan, cover crop field trials and a greenhouse for forest ecosystem restoration. We've also done 10 brokerage or B2B events discussing innovations with stakeholders in Greece, Lebanon, and Jordan. This involved presentations followed by questions and discussions, as well as one-on-one meetings between innovators and stakeholders. And you see we had a variety of different participants at these meetings. For each of our B2B events, we had a catalog of innovations, which provided overviews of innovations that were presented to stakeholders at the events, using non-technical language and also including contact information so that interested people could contact the innovators directly. These catalogs are available on our project's ICT platform, livingagrolab.eu. They're all in English, and some are also available in Arabic and Greek. So speaking of our ICT platform, which is basically an interactive website, we have various communication channels and tools, and we invite you to register on our ICT platform to join our Living Labs. If you do that, you can have access to a variety of e-learning classes, the catalogs of innovations, articles, scientific resources, recorded workshops like this one and others, networking opportunities on the forum, and more. And we have the platform available in English, Arabic, Italian, and Greek. Not everything is available in all languages, but there's a lot in each language. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. And we would be grateful right now if you would write your names and email addresses in the chat section so we can have a record of the workshop's participants. You're also welcome to type in your questions in chat. So thank you very much for joining us. I will now briefly introduce our speaker today. Dr. Anastasia Pandera is a professor and researcher in the Department of Forestry and Natural Environment Management at the Agricultural University of Athens in Karpanisi, Greece. Dr. Pandera is an executive committee member of the Hellenic Agroforestry Network and the European Agroforestry Federation. She has a doctorate in agroforestry from Aristotle University of Thessaloniki in Greece and an MSc in Forest Ecology and Biology from Purdue University, USA. Dr. Pandera has published more than 130 articles, organized stakeholder group meetings, taught courses, and coordinated and participated in research projects on such topics as agroforestry, forest ecology, and ecology and vegetation. An editor of 2 international scientific journals and a reviewer for many others, Dr. Pandera is a very important contributor in Greece for the Living Agro Project's Living Lab 2 on agroforestry for grazed woodlands. Dr. Pandera, I'll give the floor to you. Please continue with your presentation.
Yes, can you please stop sharing your screen, Lisa, so I can upload my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, stay. Now you. Can you see my screen now?
Yes. Would everybody please turn off your microphone, mute your microphone if you're not speaking, please?
Okay, can you still see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here today. And I really enjoyed collaborating with the LIVINGAGRO project, and I had the opportunity to meet some very interesting people and many interesting research groups. So I'm quite happy to be here today and give this presentation and workshop that it's actually concerning the innovations concerning the grazed woodlands, which is my major field of research. So I'm sure that during the course of the project, you must have heard many times the definitions of agroforestry, but just to be sure, I'm gonna go through a very short presentation of the terms and types of agroforestry we have. So to make it clear, agroforestry is a general term that is actually being used to characterize the combination of species. And based on these combinations, we can characterize these types of systems as silvopastorals or agro-silvopastorals. And of course, there are also the silvo-arable, which are not the ones that we were going to talk about today. So today we're going to focus on silvopastoral and agro-silvopastorals, which are actually the term used for the wooded grazed systems and areas. So here is a nice picture from Greece, and it's actually, you can see, this is the basic idea of agroforestry within the silvopastoralism. The point is that you use the animals, the flocks, that they're being grazed, they're grazing, the grazed woodlands, as people say, but the proper term is actually the silvopastoral systems. And these can be or dense forests, so they are grazed forest, or they can be open forest, like the picture you can see here. And these are being characterized by many other terms based on the country. For example, in Spain, you call these dehesas. In Portugal, they call them montados. In Greece, we have a term that they're being used like open forests, open grazed forest. There's no specific terminology, but we use the term of open grazed forest. And most of these open grazed forests in Greece are oak. So, as I have mentioned before, agroforestry is actually not something new. It has been forever, but we will come back to this. So it's a land use. You use your land. What do you use your land for? You use your land normally for forestry, that. You use your land for pastoralism. So it's a pastoralism, that. And you can use your land for many other places, but when you're using your land to have multiple products, then this is agroforestry. So in agroforestry, you actually combine the trees and the crops and or the livestock. And the key word is the same area, because some people come and ask me, okay, I have in one field, at the edge of one field, I have my crops. On the edge of the other field, I have my animals. And at the edge of the other part of my field, I have my trees. Well, no, this is not agroforestry. In agroforestry, you have to have them on the same area. So this can be in space, or this can be in time. For example, I mean, you can use something for agroforestry right now, and then in the future, because as you know, a forest, the vegetation develops. In the time, this may turn to forestry, period. Well, so, or this, you can use this, for example, in during the winter as an agroforestry, and then in the summer, you can just remove the animals and you would just use it for agricultural purposes to cultivate your crops. So this is where you also have in agroforestry this temporal actually aspect. So we have many actually definitions in the project Ag Forward. We have used the definition of integrating wood vegetation. And this, we use this wood vegetation term because there were a lot of people asking, okay, if I have something that is not a tree per se, big tree, but it's wood, but it's not so big, it's not so high. Well, yeah, it's a wood vegetation. So if it's a wood vegetation and it's combined with crop or livestock, then it's agroforestry. And as long as you use that to create some form of ecological and economic interactions. So as you understand, the basis of agroforestry, the focus, I could say, is people, because people have to live, people have to make a living, but also people make the living, but also at the same time, you have an ecological and a focus also in the environment and the positive that the environment can get out of this use. And of course, I'm comparing this to the intensive agricultural practices. So in simple words, actually, at the end, I mean, there are many, as I've told you, there are many definitions, but the key point is that you want to use your land and get the maximum out of it, but in the same time, use the minimum entrants. And what are these entrants? For example, fertilizers. For example, manpower, okay? And so that's the basic idea. And actually, this is a very popular motto, logo, I could say, because I used a lot lately also from EU. You know, you have the best, and there have been also a lot of calls of research calls for research proposals. They have always been emphasizing in this. Give us examples of maximum capacity with minimal entrance. Well, this is the answer is simple, agroforestry. This is it. And so it's not that we have discovered the wheel. Agroforestry has been here forever. It's just that people have turned from agroforestry to the intensive agriculture, and now they're turning back and they're looking back to those traditional uses that they have been practiced for hundreds and hundreds of years. So
excuse me, I'm sorry, Anastasia, your slides are not advancing. Did you realize that?
No, I don't, because my computer, they seem to be advancing.
We don't see that.
Okay. So what about now? Do you see
yes,
all
now
my
I see another
slides?
one. Yes.
Okay, so let's go really back. And so, okay. So this is the first slide, and this is the picture I have shown you with, and let me make this even bigger. Okay. All right. So, and this is the agroforest, the definition I have told you about from Nair and Maria Rosa Mosquera Losada. And this is the definition I have talked to you about from the Ag4Agro project. So this is what I've been saying now about the maximum capacity and the minimum entrance. So furthermore, classification, there has been a lot of confusion, you know, like people, as I said before, people think that, you know, just having in one plot this and one plot the other, then because they are in the same plot, this is agroforestry. No, because what you need is this interaction. The keyword is interaction. Is there an interaction between the two different types? Yes, if there's, yeah, it's agroforestry. So also Pierre Nair, and also Michael Den Herten, they have tried to actually clear this fog, this confusion, and they have compiled some baselines that can be used to classify agroforestry. So as I said before, based on the components, agroforestry can be combined, can be defined as silvopastoral, silvoarable, or agro-silvopastoral. Under my presentation today, I'm going to give you some examples, of course, of the silvopastoral ones. Concerning in space, we can have mixed dense, the grazed forest I talked to you about, mixed pairs on the boundary. Actually, this is one type of agroforest. It is a very popular one that uses actually trees in the boundary of the fields. And in between, you can have many type other of uses, like for animals to graze, for pasture, but also for agriculture. So concerning the time, they can be overlapping, as they said before. I'm not going to stay here. And also you can define the primary land use, if it's primary for agroforestry or for agriculture, for forestry, etc. And also a very important information that you may be asked if somebody asks you to classify your agroforestry system is, what is your function? What do you use it for? Is it for food? Is it for feed? It is for firewood, it's for fiber, whatever. And it's really good if ever anyone asks you to classify your agroforestry system, to use actually the ecosystem services definition. So that would make clear the definition and clear the whatever you want to say. So it maybe tell them if there are provisioning, regulating, whatever services you have from your system. Another information somebody may ask, if somebody asks you to classify your system, is the agroecological zone. And of course, the socioeconomic aspects is a very important parameter that hasn't been used so far in the past. I'm very happy to see that in nowadays, because at the end, of course, we have the environment, but at the other hand, a very important component of this agroforestry system is people, is human, is man, is the user. And so this socioeconomic aspect is very important if you want to make sure that you have this. So based on Maria Mosquera Lozada, the major types of practices of agroforestry practices are the silvoarable and silvopastoral. Among them, there are several other types that you can always find, and it's not so important.
注意点做得好一点，让妈妈没什么话说，知道吧？
Please mute your microphone if you're not the speaker.
Lisa, I think that you are the organizer. You can mute people. You have this option.
You're right, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so why do we want the agroforestry? Because we want to take the most, as remember that I will say it, I'll repeat this many times. We want to take the most out of the less. So, for example, here you have an agroforestry, that's an open, there's a distance between the trees, and here you have mostly a forestry. So in forestry, you can see below the ground, there's a dense interaction of the tree. But here, there is some centimeters of no tree root zone. And this is actually the zone that will be used by your annual crop. So if some people ask me if this will be any effect as a negative effect of the presence of the trees to the annual crop, I say no, because this is the zone that the crop will use, and it's not affected by the presence of the trees. On the contrary, whenever you add here for your annual crop, you add fertilizers, whatever you're gonna add there, any other additions. This will not link to your water reserves. This will be absorbed by your trees, and they will be taken advantage. So what I'm trying to say is that if you add fertilizer here, the fertilizer will not be lost. I mean, it will be more or less 100% used, some of it from your annual crop and the other from your trees. So you can have the maximum use of your entrance. And we have seen that because in one experiment we had in northern Greece, we had some walnut trees and some cherry trees. And within 10 years, they really grew up. I mean, they overgrown the other similar trees that they were single. They were in agroforestry use in similar settings close to our field. So they were more 1/2 higher than those, the simple ones, the ones in agroforestry. The area was used for cultivation for rye. So all the chemicals, the fertilizers that have been used for the annual crop, the leftovers were taken up by the trees. So in agroforestry, we also use a terminology that is called LER, LER. It means land equivalent ratio. It means what? If you have sole crop here and you have another sole crop here, okay, you may take some money. When you intercrop, so you have this combination, both of the crops, okay, probably the annual crop will not yield that much as if it were alone, but combine the two, you will get a higher return than if they were separately in the field. So that's exactly the basic idea of agroforestry. So now, as I said, we are coming back to the silvopastoral, so the use of trees with grazing. So when did this started? Who discovered it? Well, silvopastoral systems are probably the oldest. No, if I may, not just agroforestry systems, I could say silvopastorals are also one of the oldest practices, human practices ever. I mean, I think that humans, after being hunters, and if you consider that they were hunting in woodlots and everything, so that's moral sense in agroforestry, but of course they were not doing it intentionally. So yeah, so you can see a picture. I found this picture here in this article, and I thought it was very nice because this is more or less one type of agroforestry system. But based on Leroux, livestock grazing started since that back. So you can see that it's very, very old practice. And here we're talking about true data. I mean, I'm talking about scientific data, okay? Because based on Greek mythology, silvopastoral systems were very popular in the past. And of course, I haven't included it here in my presentation, but I don't know if you obviously, maybe you have heard the word druid. You know, druid, these magicians, they were just this, that they were actually mixing trees and leaves and whatever, and they were making all these portions and everything. So druid most probably come from the Greek word dris. Dris in Greek means oak. It's the word quercus. So dris was one of the tree that was mostly worshipped in the past in Greek. It's a very favorite tree of the Greeks. And so this picture here is actually from an area in Western Greece, which is oak trees are just everywhere. So a lot of myths come with this area, but also in other areas of Greece. And they said that these actually trees were preserved since the ancient times because Greeks believed that whenever an oak tree was developing from a seed, then a fairy and a madriada was born with it. So if somebody dared to cut this tree, then the amadriada would turn to a driada, a homeless, more or less, fairy. And of course, she would be very angry with the person who cut the tree, and she would bring bad luck for the rest of his life. So people more or less were kind of afraid to cut the trees. So we had this development of lush forest within not only Greece, I think, throughout the whole Mediterranean area, maybe Europe actually. So this myth was one, in a sense, one way that these systems were preserved. Also, another in time, you can see that there were also other type of uses, but we will talk about it. So livestock is a part of the environment, is a part of the landscape. Livestock is a part of the Mediterranean landscape, I think. Not only I'm talking about Greece, I'm talking about Jordan, about Lebanon, I'm talking about Egypt, I'm talking about the whole Mediterranean region. So Mediterranean and livestock, I think, is just something totally interconnected. Greeks, as I said, were very, Dris were, or oaks were very popular in Greece. And also it's many times mentioned these livestock and the husbandry was we have records since ancient time. And one of the first recorded actually description of husbandry was in Homer's Odyssey. As some of you might have heard, Odysseus was quite famous for his livestock. And the first thing that when he came back was to see his livestock in his setting. So and many times in Odyssey, he has discussions about the husbandry and livestock. So it's quite popular, as you can see, livestock. So, but not only, as I said, in Greece, also there are in Roman olives, You can see many orange groves, so you can see many different types. I mean, many descriptions and many pictures, that they all depict this type of double use of land. So since the ancient fairies, the druids, and to Odysseus, and also to the Romans, we come to the Byzantine times, that we also had a lot of description of agroforestry systems. And also during the Ottoman period, we have a quite description of this type of double setting, which was actually necessity because people had to eat. I mean, they had to produce their own food. I mean, they didn't have Lidl, they didn't have the supermarkets, and they just go and buy things. They had to produce them by themselves. So agroforestry was actually, I may say, most, if not all, of the fields in the past were agroforestry. So they have been there forever. They are traditional, and this is why it's very important. I think we have a legacy here, and we need to respect this legacy, and we have to pass this legacy for the future users. May these be our children or somebody's children, but we have to preserve them. We have to make sure that these are there. So as I mentioned before, the Greek oaks forest, these open forests, these agroforestry, silvopastoral systems, they have been originally preserved because of the myth. You don't want to mess with a fairy. I mean, you don't want to have bad luck for the rest of your life. So that was very far in the past. In time, then we have come to a time that these generous species, the oaks, have provided something more than myth. They have provided feed for the animal, the acorns, and we have done research about the nutritional value of acorns, and it's quite high. Of course, you cannot depend totally only in the acorns to feed your animals, but still they're a very good feed for your animals. But also you can have these cups, the cups of the acorns, and they have been used also since the very back in time as a tanning, to dye your leather garments. So all these, you have seen these Romans vest, this brown Roman vest, these were actually dyed by using acorn dyes. So there's a long value. I mean, and I have to mention that last week we visited with a group of some colleagues that they visit us here in Greece, and we visited the monastery. And I was very much surprised that when the head of the monastery, when she gave us a talk about the history of the monastery, she placed special emphasis on the natural environment. So you can see, and actually the natural environment, everything, it's an expression of God, whoever that God, we call that God with different names. So this is our history, this is our existence, the natural environment. And I think right now we are, as I said before, we need to preserve them. So let's go back. What do we combine? I think it was quite clear so far. You can have any type of tree. It can be a natural tree, oaks, for example, but also you can have artificial plantation. You can have some trees that you have planted. So they can be olive, they can be walnuts, almonds, poplars, whatever. I mean, here is the point that you just have to use your imagination. Whatever it's suitable on where you are and what are your needs. I mean, what do you want to do? As we said before, we need to also set some goals. I mean, what do I want to do with that? I mean, I want to use it for the production of acorn cups. I want to use it for the production of walnuts, whatever. You have to be quite specific on what do you want to use that. And of course, what is my understory? I mean, the understory can be the natural vegetation of the area, but also you can actually cultivate some understory species like Lycia, Medicago, Trifolium, and any other annual crop. And as a livestock, whatever you feel better, whatever you want. But of course, I mean, this is why we are organizing also these workshops and we're organizing these presentations, because it has to be clear that this is the natural environment. There is no one solution for all. You have to actually think of where am I? What do I want to do? And can I do it? For example, you don't combine sheep with olive trees. The olive owner is going to be very mad. You don't combine sheep with short olive trees. Also, you cannot do it. I mean, you cannot have agroforestry there, at least this type of agroforestry. And so this is the questions you have to ask for yourself. I mean, how and where. So it is really important to think of where am I, what's the climate here, what is the pastoral system, the traditional pastoral system used, and take into account that the traditionalism for me means wisdom. Somebody has tested it, and these people who have tested it for too many years, much more years than I did. So that means wisdom, and that means success. They cannot have failed, because if they have failed, because it was their existence was actually dependent on this type of combination and practice. So if they have failed, means most probably that they stopped doing it. So you have to take into account that what has been done, what's my climate, is there any change of climate? We will talk about it later. And what's the ownership? I mean, of course, I know that everyone wants to have some agroforestry system everywhere, but we can't, because there's this ownership issue that has to be taken into account. So what do they do? I mean, what do I want the animals? Because we can get some meat and milk. I mean, we are the Mediterraneans. We're Mediterraneans, most of us actually, I think, present. And we use our livestock for the production of meat and milk. And I'm saying that because in other countries, especially in Northern European countries, they place more emphasis on the meat rather than the milk. So we have the nutrients transfer. I will come back to you. I'm going to show you a picture of an experiment that we have right now. And we want to see not only the nutrient transfer, but also we want to see what's the difference, the effect of mycorrhizae and the soil microbial biomass right now, as this is affected by the presence of the animals. And we have the removal of the sprouts. Think about it. I mean, you have some olive trees and you have all these sprouts all around the tree. I mean, you can have there some free workers. They ask for nothing, and these are the chicken actually, and they can remove the sprouts and they can do the job for you. Of course, they increase the soil organic matter. We can confirm that. I mean, we have done so many projects and we have many experiments that we can confirm that. And of course, and very important, I mean, right now there are in Greece, right today, there are so many forest fires. And why? How did they? I mean, they started for some reason, most of the times human-induced reason. But the point is that they burn the understory biomass. So you can understand that the removing or reducing this understory biomass, it's a very important aspect for us and for our future. And of course, subsequently, we reduce the forest fire risks. So what's the problem? The problem is that we damage the regeneration of the trees. And as I said many times, and please excuse me because I'm going to say too many times, there is no one solution for all. If one of you wants to actually establish or practice a new agroforestry practice, then you definitely have to think, I mean, can I do it here? Because do I have problems with my regeneration? Do you have problems of the trees? As I said before, you cannot have this super high density olive trees. You can combine them with anything. You just have, it's just an intensive agricultural setting. That's all, period. So you cannot do that. But if the olive trees are these all ancients that I have seen also in Lebanon, yes, well, they are very well actually combined with livestock. And actually, as I told you last week, we had this meeting in a western part of Greece, in Astakos, and there is a huge platan tree huge, which has a huge hole in the tree has a big hole, and inside and this hole is used as a resting place for sheep. And I mean, this is a very old platen. We are going to actually sometime try to estimate the age of the tree. But the key point, in my belief, I don't know yet, but I think I will be able to answer yes or no soon, is that the reason why this tree is so huge and it's so big and it has been preserved for so many years is because exactly the feces of the sheep that they stay there during the night, they're producing actually a manure. This manure it's an excellent fertilizer for the tree. So this, you can see, I mean, it's a vivid tree. I mean, it's amazing. So I think the reason why this tree is like this is because of the sheep that they stay there during the nights. So what are the trees? The trees, whatever, I mean, everybody knows what you can, I mean, you can name it. This is just an example. You can take for timber, you can for fuel wood, for fencing, for charcoal, for whatever. So you can use whatever usually in your areas, you can use the trees. And they absorb the nutrients. As I said before, you have this nutrient turnaround, and you have provide shade to the animals, and take into account that since like it or not, climate is changing. So radiation is higher, it's getting higher. I mean, take it, for example, us, I mean, it's getting more and more difficult for us to stay out in the open during in the sunny days. So you have these generous trees that they're providing shade for your livestock. And of course, a happy animal, animal can produce more milk. So we can use it also for windbreaks and hedgerows and boundary markers and erosion control. For example, in my father's house, walnut trees are one of the most popular boundary markers and the most unquestionable ones, because whenever we have placed some simple fences in the past, of course, not now, these fences every year would come back further and further inside our property. But in the locations where we had these walnut trees, there was no question about where the boundaries are. And of course, the most famous use of trees, erosion control. So what are your types? Here you can see a very characteristic picture from the Silvopastoral system that we have been testing for too many years in Western Greece. So you have, this is an oak. This is the oak actually that produces this open type. You can see you need this space to produce feed for the livestock, because if it's a dense forest, then sheep is not the perfect type of combination for you. So you can see, I mean, there have been many husbandry types also I think in all the Mediterranean areas. You can have the village or flock, the moving nomadic type of systems. You have the transhumans and everything. And I think also I can say that, at least I believe that this is part of our history. I mean, even my great-grandfather, he was a shepherd, and he was just moving his flock from one area to the other. So I think this is one part of us. We are here right now because these people were trying to take the best out of the natural environment. And so nowadays, unfortunately, they have been more or less restricted to flat or restricted in the flat areas, but mostly they are being found in the semi-mountains, the mountainous areas. So in hills and in Greece are like this. And here you can see also very nice and typical picture from Greece. And this is the agro-silvopastoral I was telling you about, because here you have also this species, this oak species. And in between, we have these terraces, the balconies or terraces, you can call them. And there people use to cultivate annual crops. And when the cultivation period stops, then they introduce their animals to eat whatever the leftovers and stay there for the winter. So this is this agro-silvopastoral type of system he used. And take into account also that most of the times the annual crop was feed for the animals for the winter. So we have the vegetation layers, we have the low vegetation, the middle, and the overlay vegetation, which is the tree layer vegetation. Needless to say, the multiple products that I have said before that we take for the silvopastoral systems. And also, please note that most of the animals, they prefer the shadow of the trees. So are there any advantages? Are there any disadvantages, or what? Well, yeah, I mean, of course, as everything in this world, there are advantages and disadvantages. I think by now I have placed many emphasis on the use, it's a keyword, use of the above and below space. We have biodiversity. Of course, we have soil amelioration. You don't have to add any type of external inputs, as we said before. Of course, you have increased production because you have double production. You don't have only livestock, you have livestock and wood, you have something else. You have this free labor, removing your sprouts, and you have a lower water stress because the animals actually remove this competitive type of vegetation from your trees. And the most important, I think, and I really think that this is going to get more and more emphasis in the future, which is the forest fire risk, the reduced. And I have taken this picture because you can see this, the animals that they are actually using the shadow and of course the feed, and it's a very tasty feed for goats. So you can see that they're most of the time they're under the shade. You have nitrogen fixation, you have no water and nutrient regulation, and all the good things that we have. So what are the disadvantages? Of course, as I said, these are, for me, this is the emphasis. This is where we have to place emphasis. How can we turn disadvantages to advantages? Increased competition for space, light, and water. Of course, this is what we're supposed to do. I mean, we're managers. This is what the manager should do. I mean, the manager does not have to just drink coffee all day. I mean, the manager has to say, okay, how can I combine this system and reduce the competition? Because as I said, sometimes you can do things and sometimes not, depending on the system. Allelopathy, of course, this is also something that somebody has to take into account. The damages to trees caused by their animals, of course, they're animals. And this is why they cannot be really left alone. I mean, sometimes I know I'm trying to find the reason why some people, some livestock, there's a controversy between farmers and agroforestry livestock shepherds. And the key point is that there is no control in most of the cases. You cannot just leave your animals and go. I mean, you have to be there, you have to attend them, you have to respect it. If you don't respect it, it's not going to respect you as well. So we have low natural regeneration, but again, as I said, this is something to be taken into account. I mean, you don't have your livestock grazing in an area that is full of natural regeneration if you want regeneration. But if you don't, then that's a tool. Overgrazing, if you ask me these days, I think that the major problem are the two extremes. We have overgrazing, and a few meters away we have no grazing. So both extremes, as always, are not good. So the natural vegetation from palatable to unpalatable ones, I think this is a key result of overgrazing. So if you have regular grazing, you have no problem with that. So what are the problems nowadays? I mean, if everything is so good, what are the problems? The problem is that nowadays they are turning to intensive agriculture. I mean, I think intensive is intensiveness, if I may say this term, is the key problem actually of nowadays, because why would I have to attend my animals all day and stay and take them and wait until they graze in this when I can have them in the very nice shed and everything is optimized and everything is ready. So no problem. Why would I spend time? Well, okay, nothing comes for free in this life. So I think you have to take an addition, as I say, you have to make the calculation and see what are the positives and what are the negatives, and then see what is the balance and what's the balance best. So yeah, one of the problem is the cheap dyes that they have been using, and so there's no use for the cups. So mostly nowadays, all these agroforestry silvopastoral systems that are more for ecological rather than economic importance. And the area, actually, most of the area that is being turned to olive trees, olive groves. And the other, and I think another problem that has been going on for many years is the apostrophe of young people to practice livestock raising. Young people, and I thought that this was a Greek phenomenon, but I realized that it was not. I have seen that the same, talking with colleagues, I have realized that there's the same problem, not only Greece, but in many other areas of the Mediterranean. And so this is an issue we have to talk about, and we have to think about, because we have to emphasize all these advantages and decrease the disadvantages. So here's another picture that you have seen. I have taken it because you can see all these livestock that they're resting besides the shade provided by the tree. And what have we done? We have done many actually attempts and experiments to see how the people can take advantage. I mean, because really, I mean, the people have to see it. Examples. I mean, if I just talk to you all day today and tomorrow, I mean, I don't think I'm going to convince you unless I show you some real examples, some real results. So based on this rationale, we have done a lot of experiments. One of these was actually, we have this is a picture from the island of Kea. And in this island, they have been using the acorn cups for export to Germany to produce organic dyes. And also this lady that is doing this, I'm going to show you in the following slide about it. She's using the acorns to make cookies. And they are very expensive and they are very tasty and they're very nutritious. And you can find them even in the Galerie Lafayette in Paris. So this lady is very smart and she's taking advantage of whatever she has. And the end of it is that people stay in their country, in their homeland, and they don't have to use. So this is another area, the area of where we have done the experiment. So you can see the trees, and in between we have used this different type of experiments. And this is the type that we're looking for. Why? Because less removal of flammable biomass, so less fire risk. And as I said, this time, as I speak right now, there are big fires in Greece. This is what we don't want to have. This used to be like this. But now you can see the understory biomass have outgrown the Wallonia oak forest trees. And I don't want to think what's going to happen if a stupid person comes over and as he smokes, he just throws his cigarette along the road. I really don't want to think of what's going to happen. So this is what we want. This or this. And as I said, unfortunately, people are cutting down the trees and they're replacing them by olives. So at the end, I think that the oak trees are going to be more or less confined to the areas that they're not suitable for agriculture. And you can see the understory vegetation. So what are the future challenges? I think the future challenge, a very popular future challenge nowadays, is the climate change. And climate change is not, okay, this year it was warmer than last year. No, this is not only climate change. This is not an indication of climate change. Climate change is any type of extreme event, meaning extreme precipitation or drought, no precipitation, extreme variability of temperature, floods, windstorms. These actually are combined with or after deforestation. We have greenhouse gases, and like one of them is CO2, and it's one of them. And I think another important problem, a major problem, is the biodiversity loss. I don't know in your countries, I assume the same, but so here in Greece, we have a lot of incidents with wild boars, wild pigs, that they come in the cities, and we have many accidents, car accidents of wild boars crossing the roads. And we have many incidents of bears that they come closer and closer to the villages. Why? Because humans are expanding to their natural reserve, to their natural area. So they are also looking for feed. I mean, they have to feed. So this destruction of the natural environment comes also with the biodiversity loss, among other. And I think this is something that has to be taken into account in future. So anyway, I did this literature review about agroforestry and the role of agroforestry in climate change, so that you can see that there are many articles that they're mentioning that specifically, and also carbon stock. And because I'm sure that you know that the major problem about CO2 is not only the CO2 that is being produced by cars, but the problem is that the major amount of carbon is presently stored in the soil. So with land uses change, this carbon will be released in the environment. So if this happens, then the carbon amount in the atmosphere, we're going to go sky high. And this is when we're going to see the real actual results of climate change. And the problem is that when we see that, it's going to be reversible. So agroforestry is one of the practices that the in silvopastoral systems, of course, is one of the systems that actually holds carbon holds carbon into the soil, and this is something important. So as I said, the major problem for climate change is this land use changes, not because of the biodiversity loss, also because of the release of all this carbon that is being presently stored in the soil and that will be released to the atmosphere. Agricultural abandonment. As I said, you have all these animals that they're coming to the cities right now. We have a lot of species that they're being disappeared. Actually, there is a site in the internet that you can visit, and it says how many species are disappearing per day. And the results are really disappointing. So we have, sorry. Sorry for that. Okay, so we have different results based on the geographical location. And another issue for me, and this is why I'm really happy that I participate in projects like LIVINGAGRO, is that we have, I think, a major issue for us right now is to record these traditional uses. As I said before, this is traditional, meaning wisdom. So my question to everybody is, have you recorded all these traditional uses? Have you talked to one of these old shepherds and one of these old farmer? Have you recorded his practices? I mean, for me, this is something very important. And because this is part of us, this is part of our existence. Forest fires, it's the issue of our summer. Greek summer is totally, unfortunately, related with forest fires, and not only Greece, with all the Mediterranean. So take this into account and compare to these other settings. So look at this and look at this, totally different. Is this going to be burned? Well, actually, in this area, this is on the western part of Greece, as I said, and you have there have been several attempts of incidents of forest fires, of course, by accident. Okay, but the point is that none of it was successful. Why? Because there is this low vegetation, and the animals remove this low vegetation. So that means that there is no place to burning vegetation like here. Of course, this is not an oak forest. This is a pinus forest. So another major problem is the abandonment. As I said, we need to record them. We need to ask which one of you, we need to ask all of our old farmers to tell you the traditional practices. I mean, for me, this is a Bible, I mean, that we should conserve. And of course, resin collection was a very traditional practice for us. And also I think for most of you in your countries. And this has been abandoned because, as I said before, it's much better now. It's much cheaper to use these artificial resins. But you may ask me, what's the problem? The problem is that every time the farmer was going to collect the resin, most of the times he was also taking his animal, his livestock with him. So within the forest, there was this animal, and the animal was trampling, and they were actually enhancing organic matter turnover. So this flammable biomass, especially in pine forests like this one, was totally removed. Even the farmer himself, he was clearing the area. So this is why in the past we didn't have so frequent forest fires. Of course, we did have forest fires, and presently actually we're under the framework of another project, we're testing and to see how many of a burnt forest here in close to Athens. We want to see how frequently the fires were happening in this forest. And of course there were forests, but the time lapse was very big. So there was a time for the vegetation to reestablish and be restored. And that's a problem. Lately, these forest fires are very frequent, that frequent that you don't get the time for the vegetation, for the natural environment to restore itself. And this is why I love oak so much. This is a picture of Valonia oak after a very severe forest, after 3 months. And maybe this is why also the ancient Greeks loved so much oaks, because these are wonder species. I mean, this was, as I said, a very dense forest fire. It burned everything because, as you know, forest fires are not the same. There are different temperatures that being developed during the fire. And in these areas, you can see everything was burned. But after 3 months, these miraculous oaks have reappeared. So what are the innovations? Actually, as I have said many times, and we'll say again, we need to preserve this knowledge. We need to, for me, a major problem, a major threat is the loss of this knowledge. We have to preserve this knowledge. We have to ask, each one of you have to ask all these farmers describe you a practice. I think if we do that and we can publish this as a book, I think this is going to be a very interesting book for us and for the present, for the future generations. So the problem is, one problem that we have is the loss of this knowledge. And the other problem that we have is knowledge flexibility. Talking with many farmers, of course, I know they know what I've been doing forever. But the point is that now we are facing a new reality. Now we're facing climate change. And so we have to use what has been used in the past and adapt it to be adopted in the future setting. So we have to ask the farmers, but we also have to tell them of what's going on, it's going to happen. So let's see some innovations. One innovation is what I have described you before. This is the area from the island of Kea. And this is one of these terraces. You can see these trees are the Paulownia oak forest. And so we convinced the farmer to do whatever he was doing before, but he has abandoned it for many years. That is what? To cultivate an annual crop in his terraces. And he was so enthusiastic that since then, since the end of the project, he has still been cultivating every year his terraces, and so he's very excited. And as I said, we need to provide farmers examples, successful examples. And another type of successful example would be prunings. In the past, all the trees were pruned, and so we were actually giving to the farmers the branches and everything for use, the leaves as feed for the livestock, and the branches for fences and everything. This has stopped. For me, this is one of the practices that has to be preserved. We have to ask people, we have to record how it was done so far, and maybe we can start practicing it also at an experimental level. Actually, for us, this is one of our experimental things to do in the future. For us, we have also established some, as I have told you, that we are interested in the effect of animals to soil and everything, and regeneration and everything. So we have some permanent plots, and we are testing the difference between inside and outside the plots. And actually, within the frame of the Living Agro project, and with the funding from a private company that provide us with these seeds with plastic covers, we have actually tested the effect of plastic covers to regeneration. And here we have used it, one of our experimental plots. You can see it's fenced. And so this was one of the things that we have tested for the Living Agro project. And I can tell you that the results were very positive. Of course, everybody, when I was presenting this to conference, were like, what, you're suggesting that we have plastic covers in the forest? Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in cases where you need to enhance natural regeneration, then you can use, again, taking into account the local environment. I mean, as I said many times, there is no one solution for everything. Based on our results, this can work in cases that you need to enhance natural regeneration. So presently, we're working in another project. It's in Horizon Europe. And what we're doing in these plots, we have actually dug some pits, some holes into the ground. And here, and the reason why we want to do that is we want exactly to examine the effect, the influence of flock, of grazing, into the whole biology of the tree and, of course, soil microbiomass. So this is a picture of when we established these pits, these rhizotrons, as they're being called. Similar rhizotrons can be found also in Montpellier in France. So now we have them also in Greece. And so here you can see the two layers, soil layers, A and B. And here, this is a picture of last week. We have visited the site with our colleagues. And so here you can see the small roots they have established. And what we're going to do is going to be taking pictures of root growth every month, to evaluate the influence of grazing and tree themselves to root growth of the area. And what we're going to do also, we're going to take these soil samples once a year, and we will be testing all the microbial biomass in the two different settings. And also within the frame of this project, we have established some hunter cameras in the forest, and we are thrilled. We have discovered that there are some species there living that we never even thought of it. So we're very excited. We consider it as one of our innovation of discoveries, and we will publish this soon. So we're presently also working in another project. It's the agroforestry for you. It's agroforestry business models, because as I said, we need first to record the traditional practices, but then we also have to convince the farmers to adopt these new practices or the adapted practices to climate change. So this is exactly what we're working right now in this other project, this Horizon Project 2. So we're trying to make some business models for the farmers to help them adapt to the new reality. So some other innovations from Spain. In Spain, they're raising pigs under pine trees and pine forest, and the results are very positive, because what pigs do are actually they increase this biomass turnover, so reduce forest fire risk. That's the key point. In another, this is from northern Spain. This is a private area. It's that's bought from the Bosques Naturales. It's one company, and they have this huge area. They're actually growing walnut trees for quality wood. And they had a problem with the understory biomass, because as you understand, if there was a fire here, that there was a big investment that will be destroyed. So what they did was they hired a shepherd, and they bought some sheep, you can hear. So the shepherd, what he does all day, he just grazes the whole area. And you can see that was a very effective way of reducing the forest, the understory biomass. And here's also a picture from another location in Spain, that you can see that without grazing, and with grazing, you can see the difference, actually, the lower vegetation, understory vegetation. Here, there's another picture also from Spain. You can see they're very using silvopastoralism and for raising sheep. But also here, this is for Quercus uber. So they have a triple production. They have using the Quercus uber for the production of okay, I'll come out, I'm tired. And also you have the bulls that they've been grazing there. So in some other areas, they're also using it for the other agroforestry, for agricultural settings. In Portugal, the same, they're using livestock actually for the health of the soil, with something important. Here the same. In Morocco, it's the same. I have seen also these beautiful terraces. In Tunisia, I think Tunisia is one of the places that they have agroforestry. The definition of agroforestry, you have these multiple uses. And of course, here they have annual crops. And when they finish the annual crop, then they introduce the livestock there. And LIVINGAGRO is one of the successful examples. You can get more information. There's a lot of information provided in the website of the LIVINGAGRO project. Also in the Ag4Agro project, we have a lot of innovation leaflets and much information about the pruning, about thinnings, about the restoration. In Europe, Europe is the European Agroforestry Federation. We also there have a lot of information if somebody wants to take more examples. In the AFNet project, much more information. You can see here a very successful cheap labor that this guy used to remove understory biomass, and also the to clear the land. He used chicken. And a lot of information. Also, it's a lot of work done in Jordan, and this is also from Jordan. I think this is from many other in locations you are quite familiar with. So what are the good news? The good news are that there's growing interest now. There's growing environmental awareness, and there's a lot of research projects right now running. It's amazing. And so there's increased also demand for organic products, because at the end, it's the market that will actually ask us to provide environmentally friendly products. So people are getting more aware that this is needed, and so they will be demanding. So the demand means farmers' interest. So that means that we can collaborate with them under this, like, for example, like the Living Agro project, and produce all these nice and great things. So we have, for me, it's very important. Local population, for me, it's equally important as to study the ecosystem. And we have to provide an economic valuation of the system. So what's the take-home message? Management, 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 taking into account local population. And so it's a triangle, actually. I could say farmer, environment, management. So all of this, I think it will be our future. So thank you on behalf of these guys here, who are the leaders, who are the protagonists of this work that we're doing. And I would actually also like to thank the Living Agro project, because I had the opportunity to meet a lot of wonderful people, and in Lebanon and also in Jordan. And I'm looking forward to collaborate them soon, maybe with other projects. And of course, Greece, because we are collaborating with the Greeks. So this is it. This is my presentation, and the floor is yours, Lisa.
Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. I think we may have time for some questions and discussion. I haven't seen any questions in the chat. I saw a couple of comments. Alvaro Picardo said, since 2011, 1,000 resin workers have recovered resin production in Spain, which sounds like a positive point. And he also mentioned that cork, firewood, and meat from Coro de Hesas, I suppose, are being produced.
Yes.
More questions, comments, questions?
I have a question. Hello.
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Anastasia, I would just want to ask about the grazing methods. I think you went over it like quickly, but just to check it with you. So there is no just one single way of grazing the lands. We should adapt according to the objectives and the available environment around. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. For me, I place a lot of emphasis on that. I mean, I say, I really think that we have to ask, see, this is why I say ask your, I mean, this is one, I mean, I did apply for a project in the past. I mean, one of the Prima proposals was actually to combine all this knowledge. For me, it's really important that we need to combine all this knowledge to a single book or publication or something. That would be very interesting, because if you know what you have, then you will know how to react. If you don't, I mean, we already have a lot of issues on our head because of this climate change. We have that. But if we also don't know what we have, then it's going to be very difficult to react. So with knowledge, and then we can always work based on this knowledge, adapt to this new reality. And I think for us, for the Mediterraneans, I mean, it's really an emergency issue, because I think we're going to be the ones that the climate change will start off. I'm not saying that the climate change results are not obvious also in other locations of Europe, but I think that we are the ones that will be firstly affected. So we have to adopt and adapt if we want to be here in the future. And you know, we have so far we have war refugees. We haven't realized, we haven't seen yet the environmental refugees, but I think we're going to have pretty soon, because if especially in Northern African countries that they're going to be quite affected by the climate change. This, I mean, what are they going to do? They have to live their life, their family. They have to leave. I mean, this is so environmental refugees are going to be, I think, the future type of refugees that will have to deal with. We have to help with that. And I have to also say, I forgot to say that I have a very high respect for the Tunisian people. I mean, I have worked with some Tunisian teams, and my great respect is that they are using environmental solutions. I mean, and that's the key point. I mean, from fences, I told you about the example of with me. I mean, they're using whatever they have. They don't request for subsidies to buy these fancy fences, whatever. They're using the leaves of the palm trees to make their fences and stop the desert to come in their oasis. So I think, and I also have to mention that, if you allow me, that I think that the more rich a place is, rich in the sense of the lush production and the environment is very luxurious, I think people, in some cases, not all of course, are more arrogant in contrast to the people of the more difficult places, environmental places, that they have adapted to use the best and take the best of whatever the environment is providing. And I think these people are heroes. For me, I have a great respect for these people. And I think this is why we have to help these people and provide them with tools and information. Knowledge is a tool for me. So thank you.
We have a comment from Gregorio Velasco saying grazing with trees, a silvopastoral approach to managing and restoring dry lands. There's a reference to an FAO publication. And then we have a question from Matilda Shiru. Is there any protocol to adopt that you can suggest, such as anthropologists do, for example, participant observing, that would be useful to approach farmers and recording or reporting concerning traditional uses, for the traditional use you mentioned?
Yeah, I did mention a lot of times that we have a major, a basic component of whatever we do are the farmers. For examples, we cannot, in our case, in the nice forest that you see in the back, which is this open forest that we have a lot of incidents of illegal cuttings and lumbering. So as I say, we cannot have a policeman or a Forest Service employee after each one of the farmers and make sure that they don't cut the trees. So for me, it's collaboration is a key word. We have to collaborate with these people. We have to tell them, give them new perspective, give them actually new ways to use their tree. This is why I said that one of our priorities is to give to test this pruning and everything. Because if I tell this guy that if you prune your tree, you will get more money by feeding your animals, by using your branches first, blah blah. If you cut your tree, you're gonna have firewood for a month. How much? And that's it, period. So compared that you have for many years the use as your grandfather did, compared to nowadays use. So for me, involving to all the projects, the farmers is very important. For me also, as the question, the lady who's asked, the person who asked is said, we definitely need in our projects sociologists. Actually, because yes, I'm not a sociologist, of course. I know there's a whole science behind that. And yes, we have to take it into account. For example, in the project that we are working at now, in the Eco to Adapt Forest, we have a team that they are actually sociologists, and they are telling us how to approach and how to do. No, there is no common protocol as anything in this world, not common, but there are protocols that they're being adapted based on the reality of each reality. I agree. I
So-
mean, I said that. I mean, I said that. I mean, I'm just saying everywhere that we need sociologists. I mean, maybe equally as scientists. Because
So-
I may go and tell you do it, and he will be, oh my God, she said do it. I'm not going to do it, of course. Because so yeah, it's a different approach.
So sociologists might offer approaches for recording the traditional practices from farmers.
Definitely.
There's another question from Alvaro Picardo. What is your opinion about cap requirements for European farmers and the new admissibility coefficient?
Well, I haven't worked so much on this. That's not my, I mean, in one sense, I have, in Europe, you can find a lot of information about that. In Europe, we have a lot of policy briefs that you can read, and you can see what's Europe. I mean, there's a lot of people in Europe, the European Agroforestry Federation, that they're working on that. So please read that, these policy briefs in the Europe website. You will find everything you need. If you ask me, of course, I don't agree with whatever has been doing, but this is not an issue that we want to start talking about now, because it'll take us about an hour. If you ask my opinion.
Antonio Lopez Francos has a question. Maybe he would like to discuss that himself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a professor. If I start talking, I'm not going to end. So that's my job.
Yes, good morning to all. Yes, my question is about regeneration of trees, which I think it's a key issue in all these systems. As at least my experience in Spain is that farmers are more oriented to taking care of livestock, and then they maybe are forgetting about trees because trees are there, and then they found that after years and years of exploitation, the ESA or the silvopastoral system is not being renewed because trees are dying back little by little, and they have to invest by setting aside plots or putting protections in seedlings or planting trees or whatever. And this, I think, is something that you have maybe studied in your projects and you can give us some clues about.
Sorry, when I talk too much. Yeah, I have a great respect also for Spanish farmers, sorry. So I work a lot outdoors, and I got stung by 3 wasps, and I'm presently under the biosis, so that makes my throat even worse. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so I have seen in Spain, there's a lot of work. I mean, I know, as I said, we're sorry. We are going back to the traditional practices. So whatever I have been, I mean, I am collaborating with the University of Santiago de Compostela. I'm also collaborating with the University of Extremadura, and I know there's a lot of work being done there. So please, I can get you in touch with these people and the leaders of the groups, and they can tell you more information. But there's a lot of work being done in Spain on this issue. And I mean, I'm really admiring that, because I see also that I have been told that there are attempts to substitute from the local governments to substitute and positively, more or less, the grazing of livestock in the forest. So that's a big, I mean, for me, that's very important. I mean, that's what I use an example for whenever I see a policy person in Greece. This is why I tell him that in Spain, the local governments, they're actually trying to promote and give incentives to the farmers to start grazing. But as for the protection of trees, I think they're doing it. I mean, I don't know. So far I haven't seen something that would make a negative impression.
Okay, thanks.
In the chat, there was a reference to the concern about leaving spaces free of grazing and protecting seedlings, planting trees being costly strategies, which can be hard on farmers that have low revenue. I guess that was the concern there.
Yeah, well, okay, I don't know if this is also related to the previous question. Okay, well, as I said many times, there is no one solution for all. We have to say, what do I want to do? I mean, we have to, besides being sociologists, we have to be also a little bit of economists, because we have to take into account what we want. We cannot have it all. In some cases, we have to replace the trees. We have to protect the regeneration. So you have to think about of what you want. I mean, in many projects, there has been a lot of work done of how to protect your trees from livestock using free or cheap ways. For example, I know some people have tried to use wool as a way to protect the seedlings, as a cheap way of protecting seedlings. In some cases, I mean, I have seen many things, but so I'm pretty sure that there are ways to protect, but also you have to make your balance. I mean, what do you want? I mean, do you want this or that? I mean, there's no one solution for everything. Of course, sometimes, as I said, this is why we have in agroforestry the land equivalent ratio, because you have to add what's your production in this case and what's your production in the other case. And so when you combine the two, you may have less of one, but the ultimate result is positive. Or if it's never negative, don't do it then. Because in the Ag Forward project, we have done exactly the same experiment in 3 different locations. One was in Northern Ireland, the other one was in England, and the other one was in France. In Northern Ireland, we had some very low, high apple trees combined with grazing. In England, we had exactly the same experiment, but with older trees, higher trees. And the same experiment was in France with high trees, apple trees. They were all apple trees, apples with grazing. So of course, the result in Northern Ireland was terrible, because the animals, of course, ate the leaves and the trees and some of the trees. But in all the other cases, the results were totally very positive. And actually with France, in France, they even noticed that there was less incidence of soil molds, you know, the rats under the soil. So there was a positive there. So you see exactly the same experiment, totally 3 different results, because 3 totally different settings. And yeah, they may be costly, of course, the protection of the trees, but in some cases you have to think of what's most it's best for you. I mean, what's less costly for you. And this is another way why we need to ask the old farmers, because I'm sure they were doing something. They were using fences. What fences? Of course, not wire fences. They were using most probably some branches. So they were using wool. They were using something with spines, other trees. So there's a whole bunch. For me, I mean, it's endless, really endless. I mean, if we true. And this is a nice way to test, actually. Each one of you actually is a researcher. It's himself or herself. So I'm pretty sure that you're making your own observations and your own notice of what's good or not. And that's something that has to be recorded.
Well, we've gone over our allotted time, but I see that Alvaro Picardo may have more to add. Would you like to discuss that, Mr. Picardo?
Well, thank you, Isa. I just wanted to add that I don't think that this is a problem of studies, nor it's a problem of management. It's a problem with the coherence and consistency of policies. And the agricultural policy in Europe, it's completely different in the rest of the countries around the Mediterranean. are clearly against these systems. There are declarations to promote these initiatives, but in reality, there are many problems and barriers to implement these new systems, and especially for grazing in the forest. That's why I mentioned before the admissibility coefficient, because it's crazy. Okay, and it's just a statement. We've been studying this for more than 50 years, but if we do not change policies and administrative practices, we'll keep on losing farmers and grazed areas around the Mediterranean. And then we will claim against forest fires. But reality is there, and the political response is also there. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I have an example about that. I mean, I know, I totally agree with that. I mean, in you know, the subsidies measure 8.2 that was actually helping adopting people agroforestry practices in Greece. It hasn't been adopted in Greece. It has been adopted in Italy, in many other countries, but not in Greece. Why? Because it was a choice of the government to decide whether it will be implemented or not. And the government preferred to subsidize the purchasing of fancy agricultural machinery or whatever, but not subsidize this. So yes, of course, policy it's a key component, but in the same time, and what can we do? I mean, from our side and from your side, I assume that you always have access maybe to some policy decision takers. But okay, if you ask my opinion, what do I do about that? Well, this is what I do. I mean, for me, right now this is my free time, and I'm participating in this event because I'm pretty sure that maybe I will say something that somebody will hear, some politician will hear, and he will adopt it. And I mean, last week there was this event I organized, and there were 60 people from all around Europe and China. They attended it, and I have invited the TV channels. There's a lot of information in the news, and I think that this is my only way, because I'm not a politician. This is my only way I can to reach out policymakers and make the difference. Because personally, I did try to make the direct effect to the policymakers. I did went to the people, and the result was not so positive. So okay, I'm gonna do my best. My best is say whatever it's positive, try to spread the word. And I know a lot of, and now I have also some of my ex-graduates and my graduates holding some policy positions. So this is how we're all going to make the difference. I mean, it's not going to be one day everybody, the politicians in Greece change, or the politicians in Jordan change, or the politician in Italy change. But I think if you ask me if I'm positive, if I see a result from whatever I am doing personally, as a person that is working on the natural environment, yes, I am very happy. Of course, I haven't seen the difference that I was expecting, but what I have seen so far, I think is positive. So I'm, yeah. I don't want to become a politician though.
Sarah Maltoni pointed out that Eusta4 is an interesting platform where administrations can advocate for policies concerning forest and agroforestry matters. In the chat, she has a link, eusta4.eu. And Sarah Maltoni also suggests that we add this kind of discussion, claims, request on the Living Agro Forum. We could spread the word about agroforestry needs on the Living Agro ICT platform forum. The link is also in the chat, livingagro.eu/forum. If you register for the platform, you can get involved with that. So, well, we're run over time. I don't know if everyone is tired, if Anastasia's voice is giving out, if we want to
Yes.
consider, yeah, it is. Maybe we should continue the discussion on the
More
Living
water for
Agro
me.
forum.
Yeah.
We
More
would
water
have,
from me. Yeah.
we would be happy to have everybody join our Living Agro Living Labs on our ICT platform. You can see the links in the chat and in the forum. That's a great place to continue all of our discussions.
Okay.
So, should we say goodbye for now, but we'll see you on our ICT platform? Thank you very much, Anastasia, for your presentation. Thank you all for joining us, for
Thank
your
you.
participation.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you all, because this is what I'm very happy, because this is what the chance to get some ideas, have some ideas, give some ideas. So this is, we are working on right now, what we're doing right now, because we all have better things to do. But this is a very important thing, what we're doing now. And I think we are contributing to saving our environment by this. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Also, can I raise my hand just to say that tomorrow there will be a last appointment for a technology dissemination workshop, still concerning nurseries, reducing Phytophthora contamination for restoration purposes. So in case any of you would like to join, you will find all the information on the ICT platform again for that. And watch out for the timings, because it's very confusing, because we have people from several parts of the world, in Jordan, Lebanon, also Greek this time, and so it's very easy to get confused. I got confused myself. So thank you for joining us, and there was a last word. So
Thank you,
Thank you
Sarah. I
for
was
the
going to
presentation. Thank you from Lebanon.
Thank you very much.
The link for tomorrow's workshop is now in the chat.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
thank
Good
you
to
for
see
all
you.
those of you who could join. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.